This is Speaking of Writers. I'm Steve Richards. From the creator of the TV show Bones, The Seminarian is a twisty murder mystery. Perfect for fans of Janet Ivanovich and Carl Hyacin. Xavier Priestley, what a great name, is a snarky former seminarian turned private investigator. Dusty Quinn is a hard as nails professional stuntwoman and freelance bodyguard. When Dusty's girlfriend suddenly disappears, a woman in a strange blue wig tries to assassinate Priest, and a 12-year-old boy shows up claiming to be his son. The two friends are thrown into a maelstrom of intrigue and high-stakes violence that's as convoluted and dangerous as it is hilarious. The
That
author
sounds very complicated.
is Hart Hanson. With its unforgettable cast, parade of twists and turns, and breakneck pace, this book, The Seminarian, showcases Hart at his best, packed with action and glistening with snappy dialogue, surprising tenderness, and mostly good people doing some exceptionally bad things. This distinctive thriller is as entertaining as it is insightful, and I am so happy for the very first time to have Hart Anson on this podcast. Welcome.
I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you for having me, Steve.
So, where did the idea for The Seminarian come from?
Well, I live in Venice Beach in California, which is it's iconic for a reason. It's a busy, crazy, slightly surreal place. So you're confronted by the people who live here every day. It's kind of a delightfully in your face kind of place. It's not quiet, and you have a habit of looking at people and thinking, well, what are those two doing together? What are they talking about? What's going on there? So I can tell you that every person in the seminarian I have seen. It doesn't mean I've talked to them. It doesn't mean that I uh, am right about what they're doing and what they're talking about. But I've seen every single one of them. And when you start trying to figure out what people are doing together, stories start to suggest themselves. And that was kind of the genesis. Started, of course, with the book starts with two fishermen out on the Venice Pier. And I saw those guys out there fishing and arguing with surfers and each other and talking. It's a great place for eavesdropping, and that it starts with the book starts with a little prayer to catch a fish that I actually heard. I think I heard one of the fishermen saying, because he was muttering. I think later I figured out what he was saying, and off we went.
Let's talk about some of the characters here and start with Xavier Priestley, the snarky former seminarian. How did you create Priest?
Well, I keep a bin of ideas and character sketches, and one of the things about writing a mystery novel or a thriller, crime novel, is coming up with a protagonist that is different enough that people want to take part in their adventures, but also it's not insane that they are making an investigation. So I combined, originally I conceived him as a legal investigator, socially awkward with oppositional defiance disorder. And then when I had the idea of making him a former seminarian, I could get rid of the oppositional uh, disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, because I figure if you lost God, maybe it would make you cranky enough without having to gild the lily. So that's what I came up with. I was raised very, very Catholic. I'm very lapsed. So I felt that I could bring some of that to a former seminarian, someone who is even more religious than I ever was, and even more lapsed.
How about Dusty Queen?
Ah, I have seen that character very often on the beach near the Venice Pier, between the Venice Pier and the Venice Breakwater. For some reason, stunt people come and do their workouts or practice sword fights or other fights on the beach. And I've worked in TV for many, many years.
Yes.
So I know some stunt people. They tend to be very active. They tend to know more than one martial art. And I see them on the beach, and they train very hard. So you want one of the tropes in a crime novel is the muscle. And I thought it'd be really fun to have the muscle be a woman. In fact, almost all of Priest's cohorts, almost all of them are women. If anyone notices, he deals a lot with. He's surrounded by women who advise him, certainly more than men. Outside of Yorban, Yorban Ibarra, the fisherman, most of his friends and relatives are women.
Hart, did the characters come to you first, or did this story come to you first?
The characters come first for me. I designed this guy, a guy who had separated himself from the world and then left the oasis of religious, calm, and was back in the world. So yeah, and I thought, well, the world is Venice, the Venice boardwalk, the Venice beach is the world. So I took him from a seminary in the hills and plopped him down in the on the Venice boardwalk and made him a legal investigator, working mostly for lawyers. Somebody and all those things shape a character. Like a legal investigator has to be good on the stand. And so I thought, well, somebody who's that good on the stand, it's a bit of a performance, maybe is not so good in his personal life. I just, you go down a rabbit hole with a character, putting that character into situations that I find entertaining and hope very much that an audience would find entertaining. And you I ran through several case types. Some of them I put in the book, where he's looking at old cases to see why someone would want to kill him. Those are plot lines that I eventually didn't use in favor of the plot lines that I did use.
Hart Hanson is my guest here. And speaking of writers, The Seminarian is his new novel. Hart, I want to talk to you about your writing process a little bit and the differences between writing. So you were the creator of the TV show Bones, I mentioned in the introduction, and fiction writing too. What are they?
Well, to be really reductive about it, one of them is a team sport with a lot of help and a lot of noise. It's a noise. Writing for television involves a ton of people that you have to satisfy, and budgets, and a million elements. It's very noisy. It's like you might as well be writing at Yankee Stadium or something. Writing a book is a very, very different process. You're all by yourself. Your only critic is you, and to a certain extent, your characters. If you design characters well, there's things they'll do and things they won't do, just like humans. Not again, but silently, not as loudly. So I would sum it up as a team sport versus the loneliness of a long distance runner for a novelist, which is very peaceful and quiet.
Yes. Yeah.
But lonely.
Yeah. Much different. Yeah. Did you always know that you were a pretty good storyteller?
No. I grew up on Vancouver Island. Although my father changed a lot as he got older, he was not a fan of me reading, which in a way made it he was one of those get outside and play sports guys. He became a reader later in life, which is quite funny. But he had the effect of making reading a bit of a forbidden fruit for me. I had to hide books under my bed and that sort of stuff, which made it exotic and elusive. So I was a reader way long before I realized that writers were people and someone like me could do it. Theoretically, it was still a crazy thought for someone where I'm from to decide that they could write a book themselves or write scripts themselves. I didn't launch into that with any seriousness until I was in university.
Can you remember an early experience where you learned that language had power?
Oh, what a great question. You mean outside of arguments? Um, I that's a great question, and what first pops into my mind is persuading my mother that I needed to have an electric guitar for Christmas. And it was I would write out my points because I would get flustered if I didn't have points in front of me, and it worked. My mother was a dancer, and I knew she was a ballet dancer in her youth, and I knew that if I tried to hit that load in her, if I could try and hit that strain of creativity, that she would argue with my dad to get me an electric guitar. So I'm going to say that on my 14th Christmas, when I opened up a very cheap and well beloved electric guitar, that I thought, this language stuff has something going for it.
We're chatting with Hart Hanson here on Speaking of Writers. The Seminarian is his new novel. It is out now. When you were young and hiding those books and your father wasn't letting you read, did you ever get that far in your dreams of the success of the TV show Bones?
No, no, and I didn't. The life of a writer is a life of rejection. I once said, and it stuck in my mind, that we are paid for humiliation and rejection. We write for free, but we are paid for the humiliation and rejection. The I counted myself extremely fortunate to make a living as a writer. Um, um, Meager as it was, I was making a living. I was supporting my family in Canada. I created a show in Canada called Traders that got me an American agent who brought me down. And I worked on a few American shows very happily, very pleased. Um, Ended up with an overall deal. That's where a studio takes you off the market for other studios. And I think it's fair to say that what they hired me for was to put on shows that were having trouble, because I was 40 years old. I knew how to run a show. I knew how to produce. I was a solid writer. I was a good guy to have on your team. But as part of the deal, I wrote pilots, and Bones was my second or third pilot that went. And then everything was a shock and a delight after that, as it just hung in there for 12 seasons. So no, I never expected that, and I'm still a little bewildered and delighted by it.
Well, thank you for that show. My wife is an ER nurse, and her
Oh,
therapy when she comes home after her 12 in the ER is watching the reruns of that show every
oh,
night she
that's
works.
so nice.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Over COVID, we found out that I got I'm gonna hundreds of emails and things on social media, messages on social media saying that Bones had helped people through anxiety and depression during COVID. And I thought, wow, what a great, you set out to entertain someone. If you actually help in some way, then that's just a huge bonus. And so all of us on Bones have been delighted by that little fact of we helped people a little bit. Good for
Yeah,
us.
yeah, absolutely, yes. So, are you hard at work on another novel? And if so, can you give us a sneak peek?
Oh, I'm about to send off to my agent a novel. It's currently called The Venice Flats, which is about the flat Earth community in Venice. Something happens to them. The police don't take them very seriously because, they're flat earthers, so they have to solve their own mystery. I hope to send that in to my agent within the next couple of weeks. And then I have, a proposal for the next Seminarian book starring Xavier Priest and his family.
And still doing some TV stuff too, right?
Yeah, I'm in development on a few things. I've got a series in development at FX with the director and writer Lee Daniels. I don't often co-write, but Lee Daniels is a force of nature, so I'm enjoying that very much. And just moments before we talked, I started hearing from my TV agent that people are interested in turning the Seminarian putting Seminarian into development. So I have to decide if I want to do that or if someone else should take a kick at it. I'll probably do it. There, you got the first breaking news.
Breaking news right there from Hart Hanson about the Seminarian. And finally, Hart, what would you like readers to take away from the Seminarian?
Well, I just, I want readers to take away what I take away from books that I love, which is starting with Winnie the Pooh, which is here's a group of people that I like spending time with all their flaws. I enjoy this family, this small community, and I hope they're entertained. I hope they have a few laughs. I hope they get touched in the ticker a couple times in there, and I just hope they are entertained.
The book is A Seminarian. It's out now. The author is Hart Hanson. Hart, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Delightful to talk to you.
Thank you. And this is Speaking of Writers.